Listen carefully. Most people do not die because their body fails. They die because they never began. They carried their purpose and buried it alive. And the world never even knew what it lost. What I'm about to reveal will disturb you because you may see yourself in it. You were not created to just exist. You were designed to execute something specific, something precise, something that only you can deliver. But here is the tragedy. Most people never even discover what that is. Not because it is hidden, not because it is impossible, but because they are distracted. Distracted by survival, distracted by opinions, distracted by fear disguised as logic. They wake up every day not asking, why was I born? But asking, what do I need to do to get through today? And slowly, something begins to die. Not the body, the vision, because purpose does not shout, it whispers. And if your life is too loud, you will never hear it. You see, purpose is not something you chase. It is something you discover. And discovery requires stillness. But most people are afraid of silence, because in silence, truth speaks. And truth is uncomfortable. Truth will tell you, you are living beneath your potential. Truth will expose that you are busy but not productive. Truth will reveal that you are successful in things that do not matter. And that realization is painful. So what do people do? They avoid it. They fill their lives with noise, endless scrolling, endless talking, endless movement. Because as long as they are moving, they don't have to confront the question, why am I really here? And here is where the trap tightens. Because the longer you ignore that question, the easier it becomes to live without the answer. You begin to normalize emptiness. You call it life. You call it responsibility. You call it being realistic. But deep inside, you know something is missing. There is a quiet frustration, a feeling you cannot explain. You achieve things, you reach goals, but they feel hollow. Why? Because success without purpose is empty. And emptiness is the silent killer of destiny. Now here is the part most people never understand. Purpose is not something you create. It is something you were born with. Before anyone told you who to be, before society gave you labels, before fear entered your mind, it was already there. But life happened. And slowly, you started becoming who you were told to be, not who you were created to be. You adjusted, you adapted, you conformed. And every time you did that, you moved further away from your assignment, until one day, you no longer recognize yourself. You know how to perform. You know how to survive. You know how to fit in, but you do not know why you exist. And that is dangerous. Because a person without purpose will accept anything, any job, any lifestyle, any limitation. Not because they want it, but because they don't know what else is possible. And this is why most people die without ever starting. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack opportunity, but because they never stop long enough to ask the right question. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. You cannot find your purpose while trying to please everyone. Because purpose is not democratic. It does not need approval. It does not ask for permission. It demands alignment. And alignment requires courage. The courage to say no. The courage to walk away. The courage to be misunderstood. And most people are not willing to pay that price. So they settle. They settle for comfort. They settle for approval. They settle for a life that looks good but feels empty. And slowly, time begins to move. Days turn into years. Years turn into decades. And before they realize it, life is almost over. Now here is the question that should shake you. What if the reason you feel stuck is not because you are lost, but because you are ignoring what you already know? What if the answer has been inside you this whole time, but you keep silencing it? Think about that. Because the moment you become aware of this, you can never go back to ignorance. And that is where everything begins to change. But here is the tension. Awareness is not enough. Because knowing your purpose and starting your purpose are two completely different things. And most people never cross that line. Not because they cannot, but because something is holding them back. Something deeper than distraction. Something stronger than comfort. Something that silently controls their decisions. And until you understand what that is, you will remain exactly where you are, stuck between knowing and never becoming. It is not laziness. Let that settle. Most people think they have not started because they are lazy. That is a lie. Laziness is often a mask. Behind it is fear, not the kind of fear you talk about, the kind you hide from yourself. Because this fear is subtle. It does not scream. It whispers logic. It tells you, wait a little longer, you are not ready yet. You need more time, and you believe it, because it sounds reasonable. But here is what you were never told. Readiness is a myth. No one who ever fulfilled their purpose started ready. They started uncertain. They started afraid. They started incomplete. So if you are waiting to feel ready, you will wait forever. Now here is where it gets deeper. The real fear is not failure. Failure is visible. Failure is acceptable. Failure can be explained. The real fear is exposure. The fear that if you actually step into your purpose, you will be seen, fully seen. No masks, no excuses, no hiding. And that terrifies most people, because being seen means being judged. It means people will question you, doubt you, misunderstand you. And for someone who has built their life on approval, that is unbearable. So they stay small, not because they want to, but because it feels safer, safe to blend in, safe to follow, safe to not stand out. But safety has a cost. The cost is your purpose. Now let me disturb you even more. Some of you are not afraid of failing your purpose. You are afraid of succeeding. Yes. Because success changes everything. It changes your circle. It changes your expectations. It changes how people relate to you. And deep down, you are not sure you can handle that version of your life. So what do? You sabotage yourself. You delay. You procrastinate. You overthink. Not because you cannot move forward, but because moving forward will force you to grow. And growth is uncomfortable. Growth requires you to let go of who you are used to being. And most people are addicted to familiarity, even when it is painful. They would rather stay in a known discomfort than step into an unknown calling. Now here is the silent truth that controls everything. Your life will always move in the direction of your strongest belief, not your desires, not your dreams, your beliefs. So if you believe, I am not enough, I am not ready, I might fail, then your actions will reflect that, and your purpose will remain untouched, not because it is impossible, but because you are internally resisting it. This is why two people can have the same opportunity, and only one takes it. It is not about the opportunity. It is about identity. How you see yourself determines what you allow yourself to do, and most people have an identity that is too small for their purpose. So even when they glimpse it, they retreat, because it does not match who they believe they are. Now pause here. What if the real problem is not that you do not know your purpose, but that you do not believe you are worthy of it? What if every delay, every excuse is rooted in that one thought? I am not ready for this. But here is the truth you cannot escape. Purpose does not wait for your confidence. It demands your obedience, and obedience is uncomfortable because it requires action before clarity, movement before certainty, and that breaks the mind. The mind wants guarantees. The mind wants control. But purpose operates on a different law. It reveals itself as you move, not before. So if you are waiting to understand everything, you will never begin. And that is exactly where most people get stuck, at the starting line, full of ideas, full of potential, full of dreams, but frozen, because they are trying to eliminate risk. They are trying to predict outcomes. They are trying to feel safe. And in doing so, they never start. Now here is the shift. The people who step into their purpose are not fearless. They just decided that fear is not a valid excuse. They feel it and move anyway. They doubt and act anyway. They are uncertain and step forward anyway. And that one decision separates those who live their purpose from those who only think about it. So the question is not, are you afraid? Because you are. The real question is, will you obey your purpose or your fear? Because you cannot follow both. And every day you delay, you are making that choice. Silently, consistently, powerfully. And that choice is shaping your entire life. But this is only part of the problem. Because even if you overcome fear, there is another force even more dangerous. Something that looks harmless, but quietly destroys destinies. And until you see it, You will keep repeating the same cycle, almost starting but never fully stepping in. It is not fear alone that stops people. It is conditioning. Years of it, quiet, repeated, unquestioned. You were not born doubting yourself. You learned it. You were not born confused about your purpose. You were trained to ignore it. From the moment you entered the world, you were given instructions. Be like this. Don't be like that. Choose something safe. Follow the system. And slowly, your originality was edited. Your instincts were silenced. Your curiosity was redirected. Not because people wanted to destroy you, but because they did not understand you. And people will always try to fit you into what they understand. So if your purpose does not look familiar, they will resist it, not out of hatred, out of fear. And if you are not aware, you will absorb that fear as truth. You will begin to question your ideas, doubt your desires, shrink your vision, until eventually you stop exploring. And once you stop exploring, you stop discovering. Now here is the subtle trap. The system rewards conformity. It praises you for fitting in. It celebrates you for following rules. You get approval, validation, security, and that feels good, so you keep doing it. You follow the path laid out for you. School, job, routine, repeat. Everything looks right on the outside, but something feels wrong on the inside, because purpose does not thrive in conformity. Purpose requires expression. It demands uniqueness. It pushes you to go beyond what is normal, and that creates tension, because now you are divided. One part of you wants to stay safe. The other part wants to break free. And most people choose safety, not because they are weak, but because they have been trained to associate safety with survival. And survival feels urgent. Purpose feels optional. So survival wins. Every time. Now pause. What if the life you are living is not actually yours? What if it is a collection of expectations from people who never knew your assignment? Think about that. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin to realize, I didn't choose this. I was guided into this. I was shaped into this. And that realization is uncomfortable because now you have to take responsibility. You can no longer blame your past. You can no longer blame your environment. You see clearly, you are the one continuing the pattern. And breaking patterns requires courage because patterns feel normal, even when they are limiting. Now here is where most people get trapped. They start to sense their purpose. They feel the pull. They feel the desire. They feel the curiosity. But then the voices return. What will people say? What if this doesn't work? This is not realistic. And slowly they retreat, not because the purpose disappeared, but because the conditioning got louder. And if you do not challenge that conditioning, it will control your decisions for the rest of your life. Now here is the truth you must face. You cannot step into your purpose while thinking like everyone else. Because your purpose was not designed to be average. It was designed to stand out. And standing out will make people uncomfortable, including you, because you have been trained to avoid discomfort, but purpose lives on the other side of it. Now let me take you deeper. Some of you are not stuck because you lack direction. You are stuck because you have too many borrowed directions, too many opinions, too many voices, and in all that noise, you lost your own voice. So even when purpose tries to speak, you cannot recognize it because it does not sound like what you have been taught. It sounds different. It feels different. It challenges everything you thought was safe, and that creates resistance. Now here is the shift. The moment you begin to question everything, not from rebellion, but from awareness, you start to break free. You begin to see what is real and what was imposed. You begin to separate truth from tradition. And that is where clarity begins. But clarity is not comfortable because now you see options. And options require decisions. And decisions create consequences. And consequences demand responsibility. And most people do not want that level of responsibility. So they go back to the familiar, back to the predictable, back to the conditioned life. And they convince themselves this is enough. But deep inside, they know it is not. And that quiet knowing never leaves. It follows them in moments of silence, in moments of reflection, in moments when they see someone else living boldly. And it whispers there is more. But here is the danger. If you ignore that voice long enough, it becomes weaker. Not because it disappears, but because you stop listening. And when you stop listening, you stop responding. And when you stop responding, you stop becoming. And that is how people live entire lives without ever starting their purpose. Not because they could not, but because they were conditioned not to. And unless you break that conditioning, you will repeat the same cycle. Different year, same hesitation, different opportunity, same fear, different dream, same delay. And time will not wait for you to figure it out. It will keep moving silently, relentlessly. And there is something about time that most people misunderstand. Something that changes everything the moment you truly grasp it. Because time is not just passing, it is taking something from you, something you cannot recover. And once you see that clearly, you will never look at your life the same way again. Time is not neutral. It is not just passing. It is collecting. Every day you delay, it takes something from you. Not money, not status, opportunity, moments that will never return, windows that quietly close, chances that expire without announcement. And the most dangerous part, you don't feel it happening. There is no alarm, no warning sign, no visible loss, just silence. And in that silence, years disappear. You say, I still have time. You say, I'll start later. You say, I'm preparing. But time is not waiting for your preparation. It is moving. And with every movement, your margin is shrinking. Now, here is the truth most people avoid. Purpose has a timing, not just a calling, a timing. There are things you were meant to do in a specific season of your life. And if you miss that season, you don't just delay the result, you change the outcome. Because timing affects impact. Think about that. The same idea at the wrong time loses power. The same move at the wrong moment loses influence. So when you delay your purpose, you are not just postponing success. You are reducing your potential impact. And that is a loss you may never fully recover. Now pause. What have you been postponing? Not what you talk about, what you feel. That thing that keeps returning. That idea that won't leave you alone. That direction you keep avoiding. That is not random. That is a signal. And every time you ignore it, you train yourself to ignore your own calling. Now here is where it becomes painful. Because one day you will look back and you will see clearly all the moments you hesitated, all the times you knew but did not act, all the doors that were open but you were too afraid to walk through. And regret is heavier than failure. Failure teaches. Regret haunts. Failure says, at least you tried. Regret says, you never even started. And that voice does not go away. Now let me take you deeper. Some of you believe you can start anytime, that your purpose will always be there, waiting patiently. That is not entirely true. The purpose remains, but your capacity changes, your energy shifts, your responsibilities increase, your environment evolves. What was easy at 20 becomes difficult at 40. What was possible in one season becomes complicated in another. Not impossible, but harder, heavier, more costly. And most people do not factor that in. They assume time is flexible, but time is precise. It aligns with seasons. And when seasons pass, they take certain opportunities with them. Now here is the uncomfortable realization. Some of you are not early. You are already late. Not too late to begin, but late enough to feel the weight. Late enough to sense the urgency. Late enough to know you cannot afford more delay. And that pressure you feel, that quiet anxiety, that is not stress. That is awareness. Awareness that time is moving and you are not. Now here is the shift. The moment you respect time, your behavior changes. You stop wasting energy on distractions. You stop entertaining meaningless activities. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. Because you realize every yes to the wrong thing is a no to your purpose. And you cannot afford that anymore. Not now. Not with what you know. Now let me confront you. If you continue like this, where will you be in 5 years? Not where you hope, where you are headed. Same patterns, same hesitation, same excuses, just older, and that is the quiet tragedy. Aging without advancing, growing older without growing into your purpose. Now imagine the opposite. You decide today to move, not perfectly, not completely, but intentionally. You take one step, and that step leads to another. And slowly, momentum begins. Clarity increases. Confidence grows. Direction sharpens. Not because everything is clear, but because you started. And starting changes everything. But here is what most people miss. Starting is not the hardest part. Continuing is. Because after the excitement fades, reality appears. Resistance increases. Doubt returns. Challenges emerge. And that is where most people stop. Not at the beginning, but in the middle. They start, but they do not sustain. And that is another silent reason why purpose remains unfinished. Because it is not enough to begin. You must endure. And endurance requires something deeper, something most people have never developed, something that determines whether you will finish or fade away halfway. And until you understand that, you will keep cycling between starting and stopping. Starting is emotional, finishing is disciplined. And most people live their lives driven by emotion. They start when they feel inspired. They move when they feel motivated. They act when it feels right. But purpose does not wait for your feelings. There will be days you feel nothing, no excitement, no clarity, no drive, just resistance. And in those moments, your emotions will tell you to stop, to pause, to delay, to quit quietly. Emotion is your leader. You will obey. That is why most people never sustain progress, because they confuse motivation with commitment. Motivation is temporary. Commitment is a decision. Motivation comes and goes. Commitment remains. Now here is the deeper truth. Purpose demands discipline, not occasional effort, not bursts of energy, consistency. Showing up when it is inconvenient, when it is uncomfortable, when it feels pointless. Because purpose is not built in moments. It is built in patterns, daily choices, repeated actions, silent sacrifices. And most people are not willing to live that way. They want results without rhythm. They want impact without structure. They want purpose without process, and that is impossible. Now pause. Look at your life honestly. Not what you intend, what you actually do. Because your habits are revealing your priorities, not your words, not your plans, your patterns. If your days are filled with distraction, your purpose will remain distant. If your time is unstructured, your potential will remain unused, because purpose requires order. Now, here is where it becomes uncomfortable. Discipline exposes truth. It shows you what you value, because you would always find time for what truly matters to you. So if you keep saying, I don't have time, what you are really saying is, this is not a priority. And that is hard to accept, but it is necessary. Because until you face that truth, you will keep lying to yourself. And self-deception is the enemy of purpose. Now let me take you deeper. Some of you are not undisciplined. You are misaligned. You are putting energy into the wrong things. You are consistent in activities that do not move your purpose forward. And that creates frustration. Because you are working hard, but not progressing. Effort without alignment leads to exhaustion, not fulfillment. So the goal is not just discipline. It is directed discipline, focused, intentional, purpose-driven. Now here is the shift. When you begin to align your daily actions with your purpose, everything changes. Your time becomes meaningful. Your energy becomes effective. Your progress becomes visible, not overnight, but steadily. And that steadiness is what most people lack. They want speed, but purpose responds to consistency. Now understand this. There will be seasons where nothing seems to be happening. No results, no recognition, no visible growth, just effort. And in those seasons, your discipline will be tested, because your mind will say, this is not working, this is a waste of time, that maybe this is not for you. And if you listen, you will stop, just like before. But if you continue, something begins to shift. Not outside first, inside. Your identity strengthens, your resilience deepens, your clarity sharpens, and eventually the external results follow, but only if you endure. Now here is the painful reality. Most people never reach that point, not because they could not, but because they stopped too soon. They quit in the invisible phase, the phase where growth is happening but cannot be seen. And because they could not see it, they assumed it was not there. So they walked away, and their purpose remained unfinished. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you started and stopped? How many ideas were abandoned halfway? How many visions were never fully developed? That pattern is not random. It is a cycle. And until you break it, it will repeat again and again. New year, new plan, same outcome. Because the issue is not the idea, it is the consistency. Now here is the final layer of this truth. Discipline is not just about action. It is about identity. Who you believe you are determines what you sustain. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you will quit. If you see yourself as someone inconsistent, you will be inconsistent. But the moment you shift your identity, everything changes. I am someone who finishes. I am someone who follows through. I am someone who honors my purpose. That shift creates new behavior. And new behavior creates new results. Now understand this clearly. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your habits. And if your habits do not support your purpose will never manifest. Not because it is impossible, but because it is unsupported. Now here is where it all leads. Even if you discover your purpose, even if you overcome fear, even if you break conditioning, even if you respect time, even if you develop discipline, there is still one final barrier, one that is deeper than behavior, one that most people never confront, because it challenges everything they believe about themselves. And until you face it, you will always stop right before the breakthrough. The final barrier is identity, not what you say about yourself, what you believe at your core, because you will never outperform your self-image. Never. You can try, you can pretend, you can push for a while, but eventually you will return to who you believe you are. And that is where most people lose the battle. Not outside, inside. They discover their purpose. They feel the pull. They even start moving. But deep within, there is a quiet voice. This is not me. I am not that kind of person. I can't really do this. And that voice sabotages everything. Now here is the truth that will shake you. You are not struggling with your purpose. You are struggling with your identity. Because purpose requires a version of you that you have not fully accepted yet. A version that is bolder, stronger, more disciplined, more visible. And that version feels unfamiliar. So your mind rejects it. Not because it is wrong, but because it is new. And the mind prefers what is familiar, even if it is limiting. Now pause. Who do you believe you are? Not what you post, not what you say publicly, what you truly believe in silence. Because that belief is controlling your life. If you see yourself as average, you will live an average life. If you see yourself as uncertain, you will hesitate constantly. If you see yourself as unqualified, you will never fully step in. Even if opportunities appear, you will shrink because your identity cannot hold that level of responsibility. Now, here is where it becomes uncomfortable. Some of you have built an identity around your limitations. I am just like this. I have always been this way. This is who I am. And you use that as an excuse to stay the same. But that is not identity. That is conditioning. That is history. That is repetition. And you have mistaken it for truth. Now here is the shift. Identity is not fixed. It is formed. And anything that is formed can be reformed. But it requires awareness. And more importantly, it requires decision. The decision to no longer accept the old version of yourself, even if it feels comfortable, even if it feels familiar, even if it feels safe. Because that version cannot carry your purpose. Now understand this. Your purpose is not waiting for you to feel ready. It is waiting for you to become someone new, someone aligned, someone expanded, someone who can handle the weight of the assignment. Because purpose has weight, responsibility, pressure, expectations. And if your identity is too small, it will crush you. So instead of stepping into it, you avoid it, you delay it, you minimize it. Now here is the powerful truth. You do not become ready, then start your purpose. You start your purpose and become ready. But that process requires identity transformation. You must begin to see yourself differently, not based on your past, but based on your potential. Not based on your mistakes, but based on your design. And that shift changes everything. Because once your identity expands, your actions follow, your confidence rises, your decisions strengthen, your consistency increases. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. Now let me challenge you. What if the person you have been trying to be is too small for who you were created to become? What if your hesitation is not wisdom, but misalignment? What if the discomfort you feel is not a warning, but a signal that you are outgrowing your old self? Think about that. Because growth always feels uncomfortable. It stretches you, challenges you, forces you to evolve. And if you keep resisting that, you will stay where you are, safe, predictable, unfulfilled. Now here is the final truth of this point. You cannot live your purpose and remain the same person. It is impossible. Something must change. Your thinking, your habits, your standards, your identity. And most people are not willing to change at that level, so they stay the same. And their purpose remains untouched. But if you are still here, listening, reflecting, something is shifting, something is awakening, and you are beginning to see that this is not about starting something external. It is about becoming someone internal. And once that happens, everything changes. But there is one final realization that brings all of this together. One truth that most people avoid until it is too late. And when you finally see it, there is no more delay, no more excuses, only decision. One day, it will be over, no warning, no extension, no negotiation, just over. And in that moment, nothing you postponed will matter. Nothing you planned will matter. Nothing you almost did will matter. Only what you executed, only what you became, only what you released into the world. Now feel this. You will not be asked, what did you intend to do? You will face one silent truth. What did you actually do with what you were given? And most people will not like that answer, not because they lacked ability, but because they delayed, they waited, they hesitated, they overthought, and life moved without them. Now here is the reality that most avoid. You are not here forever. This is not a rehearsal. This is not a practice run. This is the only window you get. And every day you wake up, you are spending it, not saving it, spending it on thoughts, on actions, on decisions. And once a day is spent, it is gone forever. Now ask yourself, what are you spending your life on? Not what you say, what you actually give your time to, because that is your true priority. And that is shaping your legacy. Now here is the truth that changes everything. Your purpose is not about you. It never was. It is about what was placed inside you for others. The ideas, the gifts, the solutions, they are not random. They are assignments. And when you refuse to act on them, it is not just your loss. It is the loss of everyone who was meant to be impacted by you. Think about that. Lives you will never touch. Problems you will never solve. Change you will never create. Not because you couldn't, but because you didn't start. Now let that sit. Because purpose is not just personal. It is responsibility. And ignoring it has consequences beyond you. Now here is the final confrontation. If you continue like this, comfortable, distracted, delaying, you will arrive at the end of your life with potential still inside you, ideas still unused, gifts still hidden, purpose still untouched. And that is the real tragedy, not death. Now imagine the opposite. You decide, not tomorrow, not later. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop obeying conditioning. You stop wasting time, and you move imperfectly, uncertainly, but intentionally. And step by step, you begin to align. Your actions match your calling. Your habits support your vision. Your identity expands to carry your assignment. And slowly, your life changes. Not magically, but meaningfully. You begin to feel something new, clarity, direction, fulfillment. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally in motion. Now understand this clearly. You do not need everything figured out. You need to begin. Because movement activates purpose. Action reveals clarity, obedience, direction. And the moment you step forward, something shifts. Doors begin to open, people begin to appear, opportunities begin to align, not by accident, by design. but only after you move. Now here is the final truth. There will never be a perfect moment, no ideal conditions, no complete certainty, only a decision. A decision to stop delaying your life, a decision to stop ignoring your purpose, a decision to finally become who you were created to be. And that decision must be made by you. No one can do it for you. No one can force it out of you. It is your responsibility, your calling, your life. So the question is not, do you have a purpose? You do. The question is, will you die without ever starting it? Or will you finally rise and step into it now? You were not created to hesitate. You were not designed to delay. You were born with purpose, not by accident, but by assignment. And what you do next will define everything. You have reached the end of this revelation. There is nothing more to explain, nothing more to add. Only one truth remains. You already know what you must do.